The line at Sunrise Cafe stretched nearly to the door that morning, a typical Monday rush of bleary-eyed commuters desperate for their caffeine fix. But what happened next was anything but typical. I still remember the exact moment, the sudden hush that fell over the bustling coffee shop, the way time seemed to stand still, and how a simple act of kindness changed not just one life, but an entire community. If you've ever wondered whether small gestures can truly make a difference in our disconnected world, this story might just restore your faith in humanity. If this resonates with you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to hear more stories that remind us of the good that still exists in everyday moments. Maya Chen had been practicing what she would say for 20 minutes before working up the courage to enter Sunrise Cafe. At 32, she had been deaf since birth, but had only recently moved to this small coastal town after accepting a position as an art teacher at the local elementary school. The move meant starting over, new town, new people, new routines, and the anxiety of navigating unfamiliar spaces as a deaf person weighed heavily on her shoulders. She typically avoided busy establishments during peak hours. The noise level made lip reading nearly impossible, and the impatient stares when she struggled to communicate often left her feeling more isolated than her actual deafness ever did. But today, she had an early meeting with the school principal, and she desperately needed coffee to calm her nerves. Behind the counter, Jake Wilson was already 2 hours into his shift. At 35, with perpetual shadows under his eyes, he juggled his job as head barista with raising his 8-year-old daughter Lily after his wife had passed away 3 years earlier. The morning rush was both a blessing and a curse. The tips helped with Lily's growing expenses, but the chaos meant less time to check in with the babysitter who watched his daughter before school. When Maya finally reached the counter, she pointed to her order written neatly on her phone screen: medium latte, oat milk, 1 sugar. She also held up a small card that read, "I am deaf. Thank you for your patience." Jake nodded and smiled, but in his hurry, he accidentally pressed the wrong button. "That'll be $5.75, he said, not realizing Maya couldn't hear him. When she didn't respond, the customer behind her sighed loudly. "Some people just don't know how to order properly," muttered someone else in line. Maya sensed the tension building behind her. She pointed to her ear and shook her head, trying to explain, but Jake was already distracted by another barista asking a question. The disconnect was palpable, and Maya felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment. That's when Jake noticed the card she was holding. His expression changed instantly as understanding dawned. Instead of speaking again, he held up one finger in a "wait" gesture, then reached under the counter. The cafe fell silent as Jake pulled out a small whiteboard and marker, something he kept for his daughter's homework sessions during his breaks. He quickly wrote, "medium latte with oat milk and 1 sugar, and showed it to Maya. Her face lit up with relief and gratitude. She nodded enthusiastically. Jake wrote again, $5.75. Would you like anything else? Maya shook her head and handed him a $10 bill. As Jake made her change, he noticed her trembling hands and the way her shoulders had relaxed slightly. He recognized that look, the same one his daughter had whenever someone took the extra moment to understand her when she struggled with words after her mother's death. What happened next wasn't planned. Jake turned to his coworker and signed, "Can you make this order next, please?" His hands moved fluidly through the air, forming each sign with practiced precision. Maya's eyes widened in shock. The entire cafe seemed to freeze. Jake smiled and signed, "My daughter is hard of hearing. We've been learning ASL together for the past 2 years." Tears welled in Maya's eyes as she signed back, "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." By now, everyone in line was watching the silent conversation unfold. The impatient muttering had stopped completely. Several customers were discreetly wiping away tears. As Jake prepared Maya's latte, he continued signing, explaining that his daughter Lily had experienced hearing loss following a high fever when she was 6. "Learning to sign was the least I could do," he signed. "The world doesn't always slow down for those who need it to." Maya shared that she was new in town and nervous about her first day teaching art at the elementary school. Jake's face brightened immediately. "Lily goes there," he signed. "She loves art. She'll be in 3rd grade this year." When Maya's coffee was ready, Jake had written on the cup, "Welcome to our community. You're not alone here." He'd also drawn a small, colorful hand making the ASL sign for friend. What neither of them realized was that the school principal, Mrs. Hernandez, was also in line that morning, witnessing everything. As Maya turned to leave, Mrs. Hernandez approached her and introduced herself, speaking slowly so Maya could read her lips. "I think you're going to be a wonderful addition to our school," Mrs. Hernandez said. "And I'd like to discuss implementing an ASL program for all students, if you'd be interested in helping." The ripple effect continued throughout the day. By afternoon, a local news reporter who had been getting coffee that morning ran a story about the interaction. By evening, Sunrise Cafe had announced they would be hosting free basic ASL classes every Wednesday evening. 3 months later, Maya returned to the cafe to find something remarkable. Nearly every barista had learned basic sign language, and a small sign on the counter read, "ASL-friendly establishment." The Wednesday classes had expanded to 2 nights a week, with Jake and Maya co-teaching. Lily, Jake's daughter, had blossomed in Maya's art class, creating vibrant paintings that expressed her experience of moving between the hearing and deaf worlds. The two had formed a special bond, with Maya becoming a mentor to the young girl still adjusting to her changing abilities. For Jake, watching his daughter find connection had begun to heal wounds he'd carried since his wife's death. The single father who had been merely surviving was beginning to live again, finding community in unexpected places. The most profound change, however, was in the town itself. What began as one moment between a deaf customer and a signing barista had sparked a movement of inclusion. The elementary school now offered ASL as an elective, local businesses displayed ASL-friendly stickers, and the annual town festival included interpreters for the first time in its history. 6 months after that first morning in the cafe, Jake and Maya stood before a crowd at a community fundraiser for hearing aids for children whose families couldn't afford them. As they shared their story, Jake revealed something he hadn't told anyone except Lily. "Before Maya walked into the cafe that day, I had been thinking about moving away," he signed while speaking aloud for the non-signing audience members. "I felt isolated raising a hard-of-hearing child alone, without enough support. But that morning showed me that sometimes, the community you need is just waiting to be built." Maya nodded, adding, "And sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to bridge the gap." The fundraiser exceeded its goal threefold. But the real success couldn't be measured in dollars, it was in the transformed community, in the children who now saw difference as an opportunity for connection rather than division, and in the countless small moments of understanding that occurred daily. 1 year to the day after their first meeting, Jake and Maya stood again at the counter of Sunrise Cafe. This time, Jake wasn't working. Instead, he was nervous for an entirely different reason as he handed Maya a cup with a special message written on it. "You brought color and sound into our silent world," it read. "Will you have dinner with me Friday?" Maya's answer was a smile that spoke volumes, followed by a single, simple sign, "Yes." As I finish telling this story, I'm reminded of my own sister who struggled with hearing loss throughout her childhood. The world can be incredibly isolating when communication doesn't come easily. But I've seen firsthand how a moment of understanding can break through barriers that seem insurmountable. In my family's case, it was a teacher who learned sign language just for my sister, a gesture that changed her entire school experience. That's why I share these stories with you. Because in a world that often feels divided, these moments of connection remind us of our shared humanity. They show us that compassion isn't just a nice idea, it's a force powerful enough to transform entire communities. The story of Maya and Jake isn't just about deafness or sign language or even kindness. It's about what happens when we truly see each other, when we take the time to understand someone's experience different from our own. It's about how the smallest gestures can create the biggest changes. So the next time you encounter someone struggling to navigate a world not designed for them, remember the silence that fell over Sunrise Cafe that morning. Remember how a simple whiteboard and a few signs broke through barriers that had seemed permanent. And perhaps most importantly, remember that you have the power to be that bridge for someone else. If this story touched you, please consider subscribing to hear more real-life accounts of everyday heroes making extraordinary differences. And if you know someone who needs to be reminded of the good in the world, share this video with them. Sometimes, the stories we tell become the change we wish to see. Because in the end, it's not the grand gestures that heal our divided world, it's the quiet moments of understanding, happening one coffee shop, one classroom, one community at a time.